Discover the amazing secrets to transform stress into power. 5 touching stories revealed. Sarah stood in the lukewarm light of the diner, the scent of coffee and bacon wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. Yet the weight on her shoulders was suffocating. As she poured coffee for the early morning customers, she could feel the unyielding stress gnawing at her heart. The clatter of dishes and chatter of familiar faces faded into the background. No one here understood the struggle of balancing 2 jobs while nurturing a son who was slowly pulling away. Anxiety coiled in her stomach, a gnawing reminder that another day of overexertion lay ahead. She had spent the night tossing and turning in the thin sheets of her bed. Sleep had become a fleeting dream, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. The late-night shift scrubbing dishes at the hospital pushed her close to the edge, leaving her exhausted as she juggled bills, work, and Jake, a teenage son battling the storm of adolescence. Each day was a reminder that their lives were a double-edged sword. The price of survival was tearing them apart. She flipped through her grandmother's worn cookbook late last night, countless recipes overlapping with memories. A wild thought flickered in her mind. What if she could reclaim the joy lost in the chaos? The kitchen had once been a sanctuary, where aromas danced and laughter flourished. What if she transformed her stress into culinary creations? The concept excited her. Yet, the underlying fear tightened its grip. Was she really capable of something beyond her current reality? With her heart racing, she decided to enter the community cooking competition. Each chop of the knife felt like a slice through her doubts, yet self-doubt loomed large. What if this was just another flight of fancy? What if the people in town looked at her and scoffed, just a single mother trying to achieve the impossible? The whispers of those reduced her to someone unqualified to dream big. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When Jake caught wind of her kitchen venture, his initial skepticism morphed into something unexpected. To her surprise, he approached her with an offer to step in as her sous chef. To think the boy hissed at her only a week ago, frustrated with his own confusion around their financial struggles. But they stood side by side now, chopping vegetables and mixing spices, and in those moments, Sarah could almost feel the air change, lifting some of the burden that weighed them down. Yet, every laugh they shared felt delicate, hovering on the edge of despair. Outside pressures mounted. Bills stacked up, transportation issues loomed like dark clouds overhead, and uncertainty rattled her to the core. Would this endeavor be her turning point, or another path that led nowhere? The competition loomed closer, tightening the noose of her anxiety. Would this moment finally be her chance to bring joy back into their lives, or would fear of failure choke the life out of her dreams once again? Sarah's resolve hung in the balance, teetering at the lip of an abyss. The kitchen, stacked with memories, had become both a sanctuary and a battleground. Could she seize this moment, or would she remain a spectator in her own life, standing at the edge as the world flourished around her? Time slipped away as she grappled with the chaos of her thoughts, leaving readers gasping with anticipation. What would she choose? The following days were a whirlwind of activity and anxious anticipation. Sarah immersed herself into a regimented schedule, rising early to manage the diner, squeezing in time to upgrade her culinary skills, and returning home to a kitchen that now buzzed with both tension and hope. Each moment in the kitchen became an integral part of her personal renaissance, a transformation she hadn't expected to feel so intensely. Jake, eager to assist, often asked her questions that drove her to think deeper about the flavors and techniques they experimented with. Their kitchen conversations morphed into a dance of creativity. "Why do you use that spice, Mom? What does it do?" he would inquire, eyes wide with curiosity. With each explanation Sarah offered, she found herself reclaiming more than just her culinary passion. She was rediscovering her voice as a mother. Yet, at times, the thought of failure loomed like a shadow in the background, a constant reminder of the possibility that the judges may not appreciate her efforts. Just the other day, while organizing jars of spices, she overheard patrons at the diner sharing a laugh about that mom who wanted to be a chef. Those murmurs felt like daggers. Insecurities reared their ugly heads, causing her confidence to flicker precariously. Motivating herself became essential. So, she crafted an inner mantra: embrace the fear and cook through it. With each recipe perfected and each plate plated, the weight of judgment began to dissipate. The competitive fire sparked anew inside her, an ember of fervor that hadn't flared brightly in years. The thought of sharing her creations with potential critics momentarily eclipsed the whispers of doubt as the competition drew closer. Sarah decided they needed to experiment with a signature dish, something that would showcase not just her skills but also her unique touch. It was during one particular evening, surrounded by the aromas of sautéed vegetables and simmering sauces, that she seized her inspiration. An old family recipe of her grandmother's was nestled in the depths of her memory. A savory stew that simmered with warmth and love. "Let us put a modern twist on it," she said, excitement bubbling within her. Jake grinned, energized by her enthusiasm. Together, they went to the market, scouring for fresh ingredients. Sarah could feel the energy shift as they carefully selected each item, a rising synergy galvanizing their effort. This process was not merely about cooking. It was about reconnecting their fractured relationship. Returning home, Sarah felt a surge of determination. She meticulously prepared the dish, pouring her heart into every stir of the pot. As the rich flavors melded, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a window. Gone was the frazzled mother on the edge of defeat. In her place stood a woman ready to fight for her passion and her family. The day of the competition arrived like a storm rolling in. Sarah stood before the entrance, the weight of self-doubt and anticipation pulling in opposite directions. A quick glance at Jake's encouraging smile steadied her resolve. This moment wasn't merely a test of culinary skills. It was a gauge of her growth. But before she could step into that arena, a familiar face emerged from the crowd, one that sent waves of trepidation racing through her. Melissa, the woman whose judgment had haunted her for years. The tight spot in her chest threatened to undo her newfound confidence. Would Sarah be able to confront her past, or would it crumble her journey before it even began? In that moment of truth, she felt the weight of the cooking knife in her hand, not just as a tool for her dish, but as a reminder that she had the power to cut through every doubt that surrounded her. How would she face the unwelcome presence of her past while embracing the promise of her future? A surge of adrenaline coursed through Sarah as she recognized the familiar face of Melissa, her past intertwined with the anxiety that filled the air. Thoughts raced through her mind, each spinning a web of confusion and fear. The phantoms of self-doubt flickered before her, mischief etched in their features. Would she cower in the shadows of those judgmental eyes, or would she stand tall, holding her head high as she embarked on a new chapter? Jake sensed her shift in energy, his youthful optimism juxtaposing her inner turmoil. He stepped closer, leaning slightly to whisper, "You've worked hard, Mom. You got this." His faith in her felt like an anchor amid the swirling storm. Sarah swallowed hard, surprised by the comfort of his words. This was not just her journey. It was theirs. Collecting herself, she took a deep breath, steadying her pounding heart. With each inhalation, the overwhelming presence of Melissa began to fade, and she recalled her mantra. Embrace the fear and cook through it. What if this meeting was an opportunity? The thought ignited a flicker of resolve within her. Unwilling to let her insecurities tighten their grip, she embraced the moment. Sarah squared her shoulders and strode forward, bearing the weight of her kitchen creations like a shield. Speaking the truth, confronting the haunting memories would affirm her growth. As she approached Melissa, the world narrowed to include just the two of them, their shared history igniting both anger and understanding. "Melissa," Sarah said, her voice steady, "I didn't expect to see you here." There was an edge to her tone, and she wondered if it had the desired effect. Its firmness carved a space where lingering doubts previously resided. "Sarah?" Melissa replied, a smile tinged with condescension playing on her lips. Just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. A mom trying to be a chef? Quite a story. Her words stung, but they were no longer daggers. They transformed into mere prickles against the sturdy armor Sarah had built. "You'd be surprised what stories we tell ourselves," she retorted, surprising herself with her wit. The confrontation awakened a sense of authority within her that had laid dormant for years. The two women stood eye to eye, one absorbed in her past mistakes and the other keen on trivializing growth. In this moment, Sarah realized that she no longer needed Melissa's approval. Instead, she was carving her own path forward, one filled with risks, yes, but brimming with the potential of progress. The realization was liberating. "Your opinion doesn't define me anymore," Sarah declared confidently, turning to face the entrance, deliberately placing herself between Melissa and the looming arena of the competition. As they stepped onto the stage, an electric buzz of anticipation pulsed around her. Sarah's nerves transformed into exhilaration, fueling her focus. No longer burdened by judgment, she could channel her energies into the dish, a blend of tradition and innovation reflective of both her journey and her relationship with Jake. This was more than a signature dish. It was a manifestation of her identity, steeped in resilience and adaptability. The judges awaited, their eyes glimmering with expectation. Sarah felt Jake's unwavering support beside her. It was clear, regardless of the outcome, her growth was already a victory, the culmination of which was represented in the bowl before her as she plated her creation. A whirlwind of emotions churned inside her. The warmth of her grandmother's love flowed through her fingertips as she added the final garnish. But there remained one question unaddressed: would this dish resonate with the judges? Would they see beyond her past failures? The moment hung thick with anticipation, poised on the brink of revelation. As she turned to face the judges, the weight of the knife felt heavier than before, a tool of transformation, a reminder of her power. What awaited them on the other side of this pivotal moment? Would her past be a shadow lurking behind or a stepping stone propelling her forward? Unbeknownst to her, the answer would define not only the upcoming challenge but her very destiny in the culinary realm. The moment Sarah turned to face the judges, she felt a strange blend of serenity and chaos. Her heart raced, and she could almost hear the drumbeats of her own expectations echoing in her ears. This was her moment to shine, to transform her anxiety into a culinary masterpiece. For once, she wasn't just a mother or a former cook yearning to reclaim her passion. She was an artist ready to unveil her craft. As the judges observed her creation with scrutinizing gazes, Sarah closed her eyes for a split second, conjuring the memory of her grandmother in the kitchen. The comforting aroma of spices, the rhythm of chopping vegetables, and the laughter shared over simmering pots shaped her understanding of food. It had always been about more than just sustenance. It was about connection and expression. With renewed clarity, Sarah opened her eyes, directing her focus toward the judges. Their expressions remained unreadable, and she wrestled with the faint remnants of doubt creeping back in. Would her story resonate with them? Would they see past the surface of her dish and recognize the journey that had brought her to this place? "Today, I'm presenting a dish inspired by my childhood," she began, her voice steady and clear, surprising herself with its unwavering tone. "It's a fusion of traditional flavors and modern techniques, a reflection of who I am now, and who I strive to be." She gestured toward her dish, a vibrant medley of sautéed seasonal vegetables adorned with an herb-infused sauce drizzled artfully around the plate. "Each ingredient has a story, and together they tell mine." As she spoke, Sarah felt a shift within her. Words flowed unimpeded, filled with conviction. No longer did she feel the weight of her past. Instead, she embraced her evolution. The judges exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. For the first time, Sarah realized the power of her vulnerability. Sharing her story with the judges was not merely about validating her experience but about honoring it. She had stepped into her truth, wielding her culinary skills like weapons of empowerment. Deciding to confront not just the judges but also herself, Sarah shared snippets of her journey. The struggles, the failures, the late nights spent tinkering with recipes, and the stubborn hope that had kept her going. With every word, her narrative intertwined seamlessly with her dish, transforming it into a symbol of resilience. As the judges took their first bites, her pulse quickened again, anticipation charging the air. She observed their expressions, eyes widening in surprise, forks pausing mid-air. Each tick of the clock gnawed at her confidence, 1,000 questions colliding in her mind. Had she done enough? Did they taste the love and determination infused into every element? The head judge, a seasoned chef with a discerning palate, leaned forward. "This is remarkable," he said, searching her eyes for authenticity. "You've clearly crafted this with intention." The validation washed over Sarah like a cool breeze after a long summer day. It was as if layers of pressure she had long carried began to peel away. But in the back of her mind, a more profound question loomed: what would happen when the dust settled? Win or lose, this was only part of her journey. Had she evolved enough to withstand the inevitable disappointments of the culinary world? Just then, another judge spoke up, cutting through her introspection. "However, there's something still missing, an element that could elevate this beyond remarkable." Sarah's heart sank momentarily. She felt her spirit dip as the challenge in her mind reared its head. It was that familiar feeling of inadequacy creeping back in, but she quickly steadied herself. Each critique was an invitation to adapt, to refine, to embody resilience. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and yet Sarah felt invigorated by the challenge. This encounter, this moment of confrontation, was just another layer to her layered identity. She was not finished, there was more to discover. What that missing element was and how to integrate it might just be the catalyst for her next leap forward. As she began to formulate a response, her thoughts flickered toward the future, and she realized she was teetering on the precipice of something much larger than this competition. Would she relinquish control or seize this newfound empowerment? The time had come to face her next decision, a definitive step that could redefine her culinary aspirations once and for all. The moment Sarah stepped off the judging platform, the weight of unspoken critiques tumbled over her. Each step felt both light and heavy as she deciphered the judges' words, replaying their comments like a song with a lingering melody. She embraced the encouragement but was haunted by the lingering thought of what was still missing. In the bustling kitchen arena, the vibrant noises of culinary creation swirled around her. Yet Sarah felt detached, like a spectator rather than a participant. Visions of her dish flickered in her mind, dissecting the flavors, the plating, even the story she told. Unease draped over her shoulders. Something was indeed absent. She used to think the recipe alone would speak volumes, that accuracy and technique equated to success. But what if this was about more than just the ingredients? She sought refuge in the quiet corners of the hall, her heart racing as she engaged in banter with a fellow contestant. Alex, a charismatic chef with an infectious enthusiasm, chatted about his unconventional approach to flavor development. Sarah admired his confidence but couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that she was still benchmarking herself against others. Was that her problem? In her quest for authenticity, had she inadvertently lost touch with herself by measuring her worth against others? "Have you ever felt like the dish you created was unfinished?" she asked him, her voice wavering with vulnerability. "Absolutely," he replied with an earnest nod. "It's like trying to catch a feeling on your plate. Sometimes you hit the mark, but there are times when you can't quite convey what's bubbling inside." His response struck a chord within her, igniting a flicker of understanding. "How do you know when it's right?" His eyes sparkled as he leaned in closer. "When you feel it in your bones, when you taste it with your soul. That missing element sometimes, it's what you're afraid to share." His words lingered, unraveling something within her. What had she been too afraid to share? Each failure, every hesitation, it had all been part of her journey, shaping her into the culinary artist she aspired to be. That night, as she returned home, Sarah stood in her kitchen, a sanctuary filled with memories, aromas, and a sense of purpose that only her grandmother's recipes could evoke. The dim light flickered gently, mimicking the warmth swirling in her spirit. She opened her grandmother's tattered recipe book, pages worn and adorned with her annotations. What if she could merge the traditional with the transitional? a bold twist on a childhood staple. Instead of just recreating the familiar, she envisioned a new narrative, a story bridging past and present, melding her history with her evolving identity. With a pounding heart and sharpened focus, Sarah gathered ingredients, letting inspiration flow freely. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables took her back to her grandmother's kitchen, the laughter, the encouragement. Each slice was infused with purpose, and slowly, the missing element unveiled itself. Her vulnerability and a dash of fearlessness, allowing her to create something not just for the judges but for herself. Hours passed, completely absorbed in the magic of creation. When she finally plated her dish, it was a vivid tapestry of memory and aspiration. This wasn't just food. It was a chronicle of her evolution. As she stood back to admire her work, nervous energy surged through her veins. Would this be enough? Was she ready to embrace her truth in front of the judges once again? The finality of her decision hung in the air. Tomorrow would unveil another round of challenges, another chance to confront her fears head-on. Sarah knew it was more than just about competing. It was about redefining who she was. Would she continue to evolve, or would she cower in the shadows of inadequacy? Determined, she whispered to herself, "It's time to own this journey." As she turned off the kitchen light and closed the book filled with stories, she reflected on the gravity of what lay ahead. She was prepared, but the scale of her resolve awaited testing. A new moment awaited, one that would truly define her path, and the stakes were higher than ever. Morning light streamed through Sarah's kitchen window, illuminating her carefully plated dish, as if it were a spotlight for the performance she was poised to give. The sunlight held promise, but for Sarah, it also held the weight of expectation, her own and that of the judges. She took a deep breath, gathering the remnants of her courage from the night before. Standing in the quiet simplicity of her sanctuary, she reflected on the evolution of her thoughts and skills over the past few days. The culinary world had always been a crucible of pressure for her, but now it felt different. It was not just about competition anymore. It was about self-discovery. The realization struck her that whatever happened today, she would take ownership of her journey, not merely as a chef fighting for accolades, but as an artist expressing her identity. As she got ready to head back to the arena, determination coursed through her. She mulled over Alex's words, channeling his belief that cooking should be about capturing a feeling. She was determined to let her emotions guide her, to not overthink but to trust her intuition. Arriving at the bustling kitchen, the electric energy buzzed around her. Contestants were busy assembling their dishes, each one a unique tapestry of their own stories. Sarah watched as fellow chefs moved with purpose, and for the first time, she felt a sense of camaraderie instead of competition. She wasn't alone in this daunting kitchen. Each person was fighting their own battles. Glancing over at Alex, who was meticulously arranging a spectacular dessert, she felt a flicker of inspiration mixed with a touch of envy. Was she willing to share the raw, unfinished qualities of her identity, as he seemed so effortlessly to do? Or would she continue to retreat into the shadows of self-doubt? Sarah unconsciously ran her fingers across the stitches of her grandmother's apron wrapped around her waist. It was a symbolic gesture, a reminder of home, love, and the culinary roots that informed her every move. Mental notes from her grandmother bubbled to the surface, urging her to focus. Cooking is about connection. Flavors tell a story. The weight of tradition enlightened her. Maybe what made her dishes special was less about their perfection and more about her imperfect, authentic self. Before the judging began, an unexpected confrontation awaited. Jess, another contestant known for her fierce competitiveness, approached Sarah with a sly smile. "Are you ready to get schooled again today?" she taunted, feigning casualness. But Sarah saw the glimmer of challenge in her eye. "Are you ready to see the real me?" Sarah shot back, surprising even herself with the clarity in her voice. For too long, she'd allowed Jess's bravado to define her own narrative, letting her thrive in self-doubt. This time, Sarah felt empowered. She wouldn't be relegated to the shadows of insecurity. The tension cracked as Jess's confident facade faltered. Sarah noticed the faintest twitch of unease in Jess's expression. It occurred to Sarah that every competitor had their battles, their fears echoing just below the surface. She wasn't alone. In that moment, Sarah realized that the external pressure she felt was only a mirror reflecting her internal struggle. As the judges filed in for critiques, Sarah forced herself to focus. She was in the spotlight, but this time it felt more like a stage set for her personal performance than a trial of skills. With a firm grip on the edges of her plate, she was ready to reveal both her culinary creation and the sincerity that guided her hands. Determined to share her truth, she plated her dish with an artist's care, breathing life into her childhood memories even as the judges readied themselves for evaluation. The concept of validation shifted in her mind, transforming from something she desperately sought to something she confidently embodied as she stepped forward. Gripping the edge of the counter, the intensity built within her. Was she ready to reveal her true self? Would she rise or fall under the scrutiny of the critiques yet to come? The moment was here, and Sarah felt the weight of her past dissolve, revealing a new path forged from authenticity. She would either flourish or falter, but either way her voice would be heard. As the head judge began to speak, she held her breath, waiting for the verdict. Would her journey of self-discovery culminate in validation, or was there a lesson still to learn? All she could do now was confront whatever awaited her with open arms and an open heart. The head judge's voice resonated through the kitchen, each word crystallizing the moment Sarah had been both dreading and anticipating. A hush fell over the room as she began her critique, weighing Sarah's dish against the expectations that hung in the air. Although the judge's eyes bore into her, Sarah felt a curious sense of detachment, as though she were observing an artist scrutinizing a canvas rather than facing an evaluative gasp at her culinary offerings. Your dish showcases a profound depth of flavor, the judge began, and Sarah felt a rush of warmth spread through her. But as the feedback continued, she sensed the qualifiers looming. However, I find that elements could be more cohesive. The feedback was constructive, yet the slight sting of critique clawed at her ego. It was the precise moment she had feared. Yet instead of crumbling, Sarah found a shift in her mindset. The weight of the judge's words registered as an opportunity for growth, a chance to refine this emerging narrative she was crafting about herself. The world of culinary arts was undeniably intense, but each critique wasn't merely a judgment, it was fuel. As long as she allowed herself to evolve, each evaluation would serve as a stepping stone, leading her to a more authentic version of her artistry. After the evaluations concluded, Sarah slipped away from the swarm of chatter buzzing around the kitchen area. She took a moment for herself, stepping outside to breathe in the fresh air. The sun warmed her face, and she could hear other contestants in animated discussions, reflecting on their journeys through the competition. The camaraderie she previously felt shifted. Some competitors were relating in ways that sparked insecurities rather than partnerships. Jess's earlier taunt echoed in the recess of her mind, leaving her wondering about her true place in this environment. Consciously steering her thoughts, Sarah returned to the foundational reasons she had entered this realm. She recalled the warmth of her grandmother's kitchen, the laughter echoing amidst the clinking of pots, the smell of spices enveloping her in nostalgia. She realized that her culinary experimentation had always been rooted in joy and connection, not mere accolades. Back at her cooking station, Sarah took stock of her ingredients. Each component was a unique story, reminiscent of her family's history and her personal journey. With newfound vigor, she began brainstorming ideas for her next dish. It was time to marry her heritage with contemporary flair. She envisioned flavors dancing across plates, telling tales of love, struggle, and undeniable authenticity. If she was going to be evaluated again, she wanted to show her genuine self rather than a manufactured impression designed to fit someone else's standards. The fervor of creation surged through her as she began drafting a conceptual blueprint. This time, she wouldn't just execute a dish, she would forge a narrative through the platter, infusing each bite with her experiences, her triumphs, and even her failures. "Let them see me," Sarah whispered to the empty kitchen space around her. This declaration ignited a fire within her. She had encountered Jess's confrontation, the judge's critiques, and yet, She stood on the precipice of something profound, a breakthrough emerging from the confluence of her self-doubt and her budding confidence. In the days to come, challenges were inevitable. The competition would regale perilous feats of culinary skill and personal tension, but Sarah felt armed with an instinct that transcended the mere act of cooking. It was about forging connections not just with the judges but with herself. As the time for the next round approached, Sarah's heart raced with anticipation. She was ready to show not just her skills, but her soul. Would she rise to the occasion and truly embody her authentic self? With these burning questions lingering within her, she returned to her workspace, feeling solidified in her identity. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but it promised growth and discovery. The stakes were high, and a new challenge awaited her. Would she have the courage to confront her biggest rival yet? The self-doubt that loomed like a shadow over her progress? The moment of reckoning was coming, and Sarah could feel it in the air. The kitchen hummed with an urgency that electrified the air. Sarah stood at her station, focused yet aware of the persisting whispers of doubt curling around her mind like a vine choking a sapling. The atmosphere crackled with tension, each contestant fixated on their next move. But Sarah had a different enemy to face. The relentless echo of her own insecurities, magnified by Jess's taunt and the judge's well-meaning critique. As she surveyed her ingredients, the kaleidoscope of colors sparked a sense of purpose. Fresh herbs sat in fragrant bundles, vegetables gleamed under the stark white lights, and spices, a multitude of textures and tones, whispered promises of flavor. But the challenge wasn't just about culinary skill anymore. It was about self-expression. What did she want to communicate? With every whip of her whisk, each chop of the knife, she began to shatter the mental barriers built from previous criticisms. There was a story within her, one that extended beyond the pedestal of precision in a competition. A narrative waiting to be brought to life through the magic of cooking. Flavors would sing, elements would harmonize, yes. There would be imperfections, but they would be hers. Focus, Sarah. You can't let their eyes or words distract you from your vision, she murmured, steeling her resolve against the rising tide of anxiety. She recalled the moments in her grandmother's kitchen, discarding the need for perfection in the name of love. Cooking for her, much like living, had always been an act of devotion, embellished by the imperfections that came with spontaneity. With renewed tenacity, she sketched her dish in the air, envisioning every layer. A vibrant, savory tart topped with caramelized onions, spiced butternut squash, and a hint of goat cheese, all balanced with a drizzle of her grandmother's secret herb-infused oil. It was both homage and rebellion, a bridge between her past and the evolving chef she aspired to be. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah swept through the motions with purpose. With each dice and slice, physically and mentally, she crafted layers not just of flavor, but of her personal evolution. She felt the kinetic energy of creation pulsing through her limbs, her self-doubt blurring into the background. Perhaps for the first time, she understood that the judge's acceptance was secondary to the acceptance she needed to extend to herself. Yet, as she layered the components, a familiar figure loomed in her peripheral, Jess, casually observing and orchestrating an air of intimidation. Sarah fought the urge to glance her way, anchoring herself instead in the dish she was pouring her heart into. Jess was a mirror reflecting the doubts that threatened her resolve. Standing defiantly against that reflection would be her first act of courage. The clock ticked down relentlessly, urgency mingling with anticipation. The final seconds felt monumental. What remained on the plate would not only encapsulate her culinary prowess, but be imbued with her spirit. The buzzer sounded, and a collective exhale filled the kitchen. Contestants stepped forward to present their dishes, each showcasing their interpretation of the round's theme. When Sarah's turn came, a strange calm enveloped her. This was not merely a demonstration of skill. It was a moment that demanded authenticity, a chance to reclaim her space in the competition and within herself. As she plated her dish, her heart thrummed in her chest, echoing the realization that regardless of the outcome, this was her art, her story. She felt a flicker of resolve. This time, she would be her own fiercest advocate. This newfound clarity shimmered just beyond the horizon as she stepped in front of the judges, ready to embrace whatever came next with open arms. Would she emerge empowered from their critique, or would the shadows of doubt return? With the world watching, she discovered an unexpected ally within her own confidence. But before she could delve deeper into this revelation, the head judge's penetrating gaze fixed on her, and her breath hitched. The stakes of her moment were rising rapidly. What awaited her in the verdict, and how would it redefine her journey ahead? The head judge leaned forward, his expression inscrutable. Each heartbeat echoed in Sarah's ears as she prepared to unearth the vulnerability that she had built so meticulously. The spotlight bathed her in warm light, which somehow felt heavy, as if the whole kitchen was holding its breath along with her. "Tell us about your dish, Sarah," he prompted, breaking the thick tension. Instinctively, her fingers brushed the edge of the plate, feeling the warmth radiate from each component. This was her moment, no longer defined solely by Jess's presence, nor the fear of judgment. "This tart is inspired by my childhood," she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. She felt the tremor of uncertainty morph into something powerful, grounding her. It's about love and imperfection. Every ingredient connects to a memory, my grandmother teaching me that cooking is as much about telling a story as it is about technique. The judges nodded, their expressions easing slightly, but the tension remained a constant reminder of the stakes involved. The head judge reached out and forked a piece of the tart, raising it to his mouth. Time stretched as she watched him taste, her heart racing, blood pounding in her ears. Would he find the same warmth in her dish that she had intended? He swallowed, and the faintest smile appeared on his face. "There's a comfort in this dish, an earnestness. It's well composed but also has that rustic spirit." The praise sent a rush of warmth through her, igniting a mix of hope and disbelief. Perhaps this was what she had been searching for, not just validation, but connection. Yet just as relief began to settle within, Jess made her move. "If you want to win, you need to play it safe," she interjected, venom lacing her words as her gaze locked onto Sarah. "Audiences appreciate execution, not your fairy tale nostalgia." Jess's interruption struck a chord, and a familiar insecurity bubbled to the surface. It was a reminder of the thin line between artistry and validation. Jessica's voice echoed in her mind, an unsolicited critique gnawing at her growing confidence. But this time Sarah felt a shift. "Execution is essential," she responded, her voice steady, "but so is authenticity. If you only cater to expectations, what have you really achieved? This is about who I am." By standing firm, she felt the layers of doubt peeling away like the caramelized onions she had crafted earlier. For the first time, she understood that affirmation from others was not a measure of her worth as a chef or a person. What mattered was the integrity behind her choices, the commitment to her voice. The judges seemed struck by her candor, a ripple of intrigue reflecting back to her. Sarah took a deep breath, unraveling further. The imperfections in cooking mirror life itself. Messy, unpredictable, yet often beautiful when you lean into them. The head judge's gaze softened, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "That's a profound thought, Sarah. Do you see your future in that light?" Her future? The question lingered, unveiling the vastness of possibility. With each passing day, she was no longer just participating in a competition, she was crafting her vision of what it meant to be a chef, an artist. "I do," she confessed, feeling emboldened. "I want to explore flavors, stories that resonate and inspire others to appreciate their own uniqueness." As the judging concluded and the verdict loomed, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline invigorating her spirit. Regardless of the outcome, she was forging a new path defined by courage rather than fear. But as she stepped back from the judges to await their decision, Jess's smirk returned, masking something deeper beneath the surface: resentment, perhaps, or the fear of being overshadowed. Just as quickly as resolve filled her, the uncertainty sparked again within. What depths would Jess plumb to reclaim her own narrative? With that thought crackling through her mind, Sarah prepared for the inevitable confrontation. For it had become clear that the battle was not only against the judges or her dish but also against the shadows that others cast upon her vibrant dreams. The moment of reckoning loomed ahead, and she knew she would need to fortify herself against the tides threatening her resolve. The day of the final competition dawned bright and clear, filled with an electric energy that set Sarah's heart racing. This was it. This was her moment to culminate her journey. The convergence of determination, vulnerability, and personal growth. As she prepared her dish, the weight of past insecurities transformed into buoyant wings of confidence. She stood taller, transcending the shadows that had once loomed so large. With each ingredient she carefully selected, sparks of purpose ignited. Her signature dish, infused with the essence of her grandmother's teachings and her newfound confidence, was more than just a plate of food. It was a testament to her journey. Each layer represented struggles fought and conquered, identity rebuilt from the ashes of doubt. This was a moment to demonstrate not just culinary prowess but the conflation of her experiences and emotions. When her turn at the plate finally arrived, she stepped forward, her pulse steady yet adrenaline-fueled. The judges' expressions mirrored the anticipation rippling through her. This was no longer just about the outcome but the embracing of her personal truth. Today, I present to you a dish that blends my past with my present, a savory tart symbolizing the love, the struggles, and the triumphs that define me, she said, feeling an empowering surge within as the first judge took a bite. Time seemed to both stand still and rush forward. The silence hung in the air, pulsating with unspoken anticipation. She focused on their faces, searching for fleeting emotions that might betray their thoughts. When they nodded in appreciation, she felt a flicker of hope. But it wasn't until the head judge delivered his feedback that satisfaction washed over her. Your dish carries not only flavor but a story. There's an authenticity that resonates, and the harmony of these elements speaks to your growth as both a chef and a person. I respect you for putting your heart on this plate, he said. Each word was a sweet caress, affirming the journey she traversed as other contestants presented their inspiring creations. Sarah felt a warm camaraderie surge through the kitchen. She no longer saw them as opponents but as fellow artists, each telling their tale through their culinary expressions. Upon stepping back from the judges, Sarah glanced at Jess, who was noticeably quieter. Perhaps her words had forged a crack in the wall of competition, revealing the potential for connection where rivalry once thrived. In a moment of clarity, Sarah understood her achievements extended far beyond accolades. She had reclaimed her voice, solidifying her place in both the kitchen and her life. Her dish had been a revelation, an exploration of identity, one that represented everything she had strived to overcome. When the winners were finally announced, the air was charged with anticipation. When Sarah's name echoed through the hall, a wave of disbelief washed over her, followed by a rush of exhilaration. She had not only achieved victory, she had transformed doubt into power, resilience, and radiance. The applause of her peers filled her ears, but deeper than the sound was a profound satisfaction, a solid confidence that she had finally claimed her space. As she accepted the award, the recognition symbolized the tremendous steps she had taken, not only to redefine her culinary skills but to anchor herself firmly within her identity. Clutching the award, she turned to find Jake beaming with pride. Validation shining in his eyes mirrored the undeniable reflection of growth between them. They had fought their battles together, torn and rebuilt. This was not merely a personal triumph. It was a reclaiming of their relationship that had blossomed again in the kitchen. As the event wrapped up, Sarah stood in the warming glow of success. She realized that she was no longer defined by others' judgments but by her courage to stand up, to own her journey. The shadows that had once followed her evaporated, now mere echoes of a past she had embraced and harnessed. Sarah emerged not just as a competitor, but as a beacon for those navigating similar struggles. This journey had solidified her commitment to authenticity, and she would carry this newfound confidence into whatever the future may hold. The culinary world awaited, but beyond that her true adventure had just begun. Reflecting on her transformation, Sarah smiled, ready to take the next step affirmatively. She had crossed the threshold, stepping not just toward success, but toward a thriving representation of self. This was her moment of personal achievement, and it was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these transformative tales. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You will change their lives. Don't wait even one more second to share.